some people just like taking risks. They are the kind of people that will go skydiving, go on dangerous adventures, and do things that the ordinary person would not even think about. Well, I'm going to talk about a woman today. What she did was very, very bold. I mean, she wanted to take the gospel to people, and she could have taken it to students. She could have taken it to the marketplace. She could have even talked to scouts, but she decided to preach to armed robbers, not just armed robbers, but extremely dangerous armed robbers. And what were the circumstances that led to this? I mean, for her to take that kind of decision, and how did the experience go? And at the end, what happened to her? If you want to know more about this, stick around. The story I'm going to share with you is not something I read in the newspapers, and it's not something that somebody told me about somebody. The lady that it happened to directly shared this experience with me. And that time, it was really something that gave me kind of like, I felt kind of like chills. It was something that I could not actually believe now. But let me start with giving a context. I mean, she was just a regular person like you and I. In fact, she was an air hostess. Yes, she was a flight attendant. That was her career. That was the career she settled for, and she was extremely good. In fact, in her flight training school, the aviation school that she attended, before they employed her, she was the best candidate. She was extremely good at what she was doing. And as a flight attendant, even as a pilot, you have the opportunity to travel over all over the world. She traveled all over the world, and they stay in the best hotels. You know, they actually live what the Gen Zs will call a soft life. She was living a soft life. So there was nothing in her life that indicated that one day she'll be doing anything different. And she kept on working. She worked for this airline for quite a number of years. And after a while, there was a problem in the aviation sector, yes, in Nigeria. And as a result of that, they laid some staff off. In fact, that particular airline was kind of disbanded. It no longer exists today. So she was now left with, she didn't have a job. And for a while, she was selling things, she was selling things, and she had the opportunity to relocate, to stay outside Nigeria because she had a passport, and in her passport, she had traveled to so many countries. So it would have been easy for her to relocate to another country, start a new life where most of the time people feel you have better opportunities. But she decided to stay here in Nigeria, and she was doing continued buying and selling. But after a while, she felt that there was just something different, that she had to do something different. It happens to all of us, or quite a number of us. You have a certain career, or there's a way you live your life, and you feel that you'll be doing things, you just keep on, from day to day, just doing things that people expect you to do, or living a lifestyle that is acceptable. But sometimes there's something that is pushing you towards another direction. You try to ignore the voice. Sometimes some people ignore the voice for years, for months, but after a while, the voice now becomes so strong inside of you that you have to answer the call. So, according to her, she told me the story herself. She said that she felt like God was telling her to do a ministry, a different ministry. At that time, she was living in the Ikeja area of Lagos. And in the Ikeja area of Lagos, you have um, an organization for the police, but that organization no longer exists because there were problems, and we had like this NSAS. There was this time in Nigeria, I had this agitation of NSAS because people felt like the Nigerian police, some members of the Nigerian police were going out of their way to make the lives of others unpleasant. And so they had this protest, and a lot of their offices were disbanded. So they had this place where in Ikeja area of Lagos, for people that live in Lagos, they will know this Ikeja, where they kept hardened criminals. I mean, extremely hardened criminals. For you to find yourself in that place, that particular location in Ikeja, is for people that are suspect for real terrible crimes. I mean, all kinds of crimes you can imagine, the worst crimes. That was the place they kept those people. So she lived in the Ikeja area. So sometimes when she passes the Ikeja area, she felt like God was telling her that she should preach the gospel to those hardened criminals. I mean, if people had a chance to, when it comes to the gospel, if people had a chance to choose who they would preach to, I'm telling you that most people would not preach to those kind of people. I mean, those are not the first kind of people you want to preach to. First of all, you are scared of them. Second of all, you feel like there's no hope for them, that they are so hardened, there's no way to help them. Just for example, if someone tells you to preach to an maybe a terrorist, I mean someone that is an extremist, you may feel that there's really nothing you can tell them, that they're hardened, you may be scared for your life and stuff. But God told her to go there, a female. And this particular place, you had mostly males. I'm sure they were all males. I can't remember now. She didn't tell me exactly. But I'm guessing that they were mostly males, because when it comes to all most of these very violent crimes, especially when it comes to robbery, most of the time they are males. But she didn't tell me that they were females there. At least when she was talking about, she didn't mention females. But it was a place that was deemed extremely dangerous. And the cells she went to, I'm sure there were different cells there. The cells she went to were for males. Yes. Actually, she talked about talking to males, So, in fact, when she went to take permissions from the authority, when she went to take permission from the authority, they were looking at her like, is this woman all right? There's some things you do, and people will be wondering that. They'll be wondering that if you are still okay, are you okay? Are you all right? You understand? So they were wondering, I mean, you're a woman, you're a single woman, what are you doing here? And she's a very extremely beautiful woman. So they felt, I mean, there's so many things you can do as a young woman. What are you coming here to do? But since she was given the directive, she went and she applied and she took the necessary permission, and they gave her permission. That's how she started preaching to these particular people. So what they will do, they will open the door, and when she enters, they'll close it behind her. So she'll be together, she'll be with these hardened criminals, and she'll be preaching the gospel, and she continued doing this. After a while, they became used to her. So as soon as she comes, they just let her come inside. And that was how things were moving on till one fateful day. Now, before that, let me even give a kind of a story. Before that, there was one day she said that she went there, she was preaching to the suspected criminals. I won't call them criminals because they were suspect. They had not gone to court, but that was where they would remand them, put them till they go to court. But you know how the Nigerian system works. It's not all the time that they end up in court. So on this particular day, she was preaching, and she was like, in fact, the policemen that were around were telling the inmates that you better listen to this woman. For some of you, this is going to be your last preaching. This is going to be the last preaching you hear in your life. And you'll be wondering why. And I'll tell you what happened afterwards. So as she was preaching, she continued preaching, and she called for people that wanted to give their life to Jesus. And some people came out. Then at the end, as she said, while she was preaching, or towards the end, I don't know what, they now called some of the inmates, called them, and when they went out to the courtyard, he did something to them. I don't want to say what he did, but they did something to them that it actually made it what they said true, that was the last preaching they would hear. Sometimes when some of these people are arrested, they're supposed to be taken to court so that they're supposed to have lawyers and all that. But the system then was really bad. But I think to a large extent, the Nigerian police force, they have changed some of those systems. The system was so bad that sometimes these hardened criminals don't even have the opportunity to go to courts. Things happen to them, and sometimes they take the things that they stole. They steal a lot of things. Then it was the time of cash. It's not now that you have transfers. Then cash was what was people used for buying and selling. Transfers that were not that common. So they could just go to their accounts, tell those bad guys to, they would instruct them to go to find a way of going to their account to collect all the money, and those people will not be seen again on the earth, and nobody will know where the money went. You know how corrupt systems happen. But to be fair to the Nigerian police, things are not as bad as they are. They have reformed most of those areas, and some of those offices, some of those places where some of those detention centers have been disbanded, they no longer exist because of the gross corruption that happened there. So that was the kind of environment it was. It was a place that nobody want to go. And when you are there, there's a very high likelihood that you'll be sentenced to death. So it's not a place that you go and you get a light sentence. You'll be sentenced to death, or you spend so many years when you are eventually sentenced, when you eventually get the opportunity to have your day in court. So that was the kind of atmosphere where this woman was preaching. It wasn't somewhere for the faint-hearted. I mean, she would go there, and people will be wondering that how do you have the heart to go to this kind of place? You're a woman. I mean, you have such boldness to go to this kind of place. Anyway, on that fateful day when she went to preach as usual, so she was preaching, and there were some people, of course, that didn't like what she was doing. Yes, there was a particular man, a particular armed robber, a particular armed bandit that she was preaching to. He didn't like what she was doing. She had no idea at that point, but he was really angry with her. And that day, he said to himself that he was going to end her life. That was what he determined. He was going to end her life. So while she was preaching, she said suddenly she just saw somebody flying over her, from the back to the front. And she was wondering, how did the person fly over her? And guess what? The person, what that guy wanted to do, he carried a knife. So while she was preaching, he wanted to stab her to death. For him to have even planned to stab her, it meant he wanted to stab her to death. But what happened? As he was about to stab her from behind, an unseen hand just held his hand. An unseen person, and I'll call that person an angel. Yeah, I'll call the person an unseen person just held his hand, and he was about to stab, just carried him and threw him over her. So what she saw was somebody passing over her. And so it was an angel that came to rescue her. This is a real story. So this is not a story that I heard somewhere. I know the person that it happened to, and she told me the story herself. So at the end of the day, her life was saved. So at the end of the day, she was protected. So what if God, for example, God tells you that you should go and preach to people that no, you are not people feel that you're not supposed to preach to, or that at the end of the day, not they really can't change, would you go? Would you go? Or would you just be scared and not go? Sometimes in life, we have some assignment that we are told to do that may be difficult, that may be dangerous, that may be unpleasant. But sometimes we are meant to do those kind of things. Have you ever experienced that in your life where you were told to do something that you were not exactly pleased about? You felt that your life had more to offer, or there were more opportunities somewhere and you had to let go. I just want to give you an assurance. If you're in that kind of situation right now, you feel like, oh, what you are doing, nobody appreciates you, or what you are doing is not what you are supposed to do. But if you are meant to be there, please just hold on. Just hold on. Because at the end of the day, you will be protected. You will understand exactly why you are doing that. As I speak today, last time I heard from the lady, I've not heard from her for like 2 years. She's still preaching to people that are incarcerated. She's still going to prisons, talking to prisoners and talking to people like that. That is her calling, and that's what she's been doing. And God has blessed her. In that time, she has been able to do so many things. She has people pay. She's been able. So sometimes you think when you do those things, your life is over. She's been able to do things even once in a while. She got an offer once. Somebody sponsored her trip to the UK for a holiday. She stayed in the UK for a month, and she got so many things, so many nice things. So sometimes just keep on doing what you're doing. People are watching, and in time you'll be rewarded. If not here, you'll be rewarded in the most significant way, in a way that everybody will want to be rewarded at the end of their life. So till I see you in the next video where I share something that will get us thinking. Take care and